अस्सलाम वालेकुम व्यूअर्स। आज हम बात करेंगे इंट्रोडक्शन टू एपिडेमियोलॉजी। एपिडेमियोलॉजी पे आज हम बातचीत करते हैं और ये हमारे स्क्रीन पे जो स्लाइड है तो इसके रिलेटेड हम बातचीत करते हैं। एपिडेमियोलॉजी में आज हम इसमें क्या क्या पढ़ेंगे। हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट, एग्जांपल ऑफ मॉडर्न एपिडेमियोलॉजी, एपिडेमियोलॉजी, 5W in the epidemiology, objectives in the epidemiology, type of epidemiology, basic triad of the epidemiology, epidemiological concept, epidemiology and clinical practice, epidemiological approach। तो हम स्टार्ट करते हैं हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट से। हिपोक्रेट्स ऑन एयर, वाटर एंड प्लेसेस, फादर ऑफ मॉडर्न मेडिसिन जो है हिपोक्रेट्स है। बेस्ड ऑन हिज ऑब्जर्वेशन सजेस्टेड दैट the development of disease might be related to the external and personal environment. Whoever wishes to investigate medicine properly should proceed thus. In the first place, to consider the season of the year and what effect each of them produce, then the wind, the hot, and the cold. One should consider most attentively the water which the inhabitants use, whether they may be marshy or soft or hard, running from elevated and rocky situation, and the mode in which inhabitants live and what are their pursuit, whether they are fond of drinking, eating to excess, and giving to indolence, or are fond of exercise and labor. Hippocrates first expressed the idea that environmental factors can influence the occurrence of a disease. However, it was not until the 19th century that the distribution of disease in a specific human population group was measured to any large extent. London Bill of Mortality prepared the Parsh Cleric the documentation of the death, 1603. John Grant, 1662, natural and political observation made upon the Bill of Mortality. James Lind, 1747, experiment of test of etiological hypothesis in screwy. William Farr, 1850, systematic vital statistics, also development of basic epidemiological principle. William Byrd, 1839, contagious basis of typhoid. John Snow, 1849, cholera in the London. J. Goldberger, 1940, pellagra not contagious. Dole and Hill, 1950, association of smoking with lung cancer. Example of modern epidemiology, vitamin C and scurvy, James Lind, etiology of cholera, John Snow, smoking and lung cancer, Richard Dole, A. Bradford. Epidemiology, the study of occurrence and distribution of the health-related states or events in a specified population, including the study of determinant influencing such a state and the application of this knowledge to control the health problem. Distribution of health-related state or event in a specified population, including study of determinant influencing such a state and the application of his knowledge to control the health problem. I hope you got the definition. Moving next. Distribution refer to analysis by the time, place, and classes or subgroup of person affected in a population or in a society. Consider who is getting the disease within population, where and when the disease is occurring. Who is getting the disease within a population, where disease and when the disease is occurring. determinant all the physical, biological, social, cultural, economical, and behavioral factors that influence health, health related states, and events. Disease causes of death, behavior, reaction to prevent program and provision and use of health services. Specified population, those with common identifiable characteristics. This is another definition of the etiology in which the following terms which are very specific for. The word epidemiology is derived from Greek word epi means upon, demos means people, logos means study of the people. The broad definition of epidemiology can further be elaborated as followed: study including surveillance, observation, hypothesis testing, analytic research, and experiment. Distribution refer to analytics of time, person, place, and classes of people affected. Determinants include factors that influence health, biological, chemical, physical, social, cultural, economical, genetic, and behavior. Health related states and events refer to disease, cause of death, behavior such as use of tobacco, positive health states, reaction to prevent the regime, and provision of the use of the health services. A specified population including those with identifiable characteristics such as occupational group. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their name are what, why, and when, how and where, and who. What, why, when, how, where, and who. 5W in the epidemiology, including activities related to characterizing the distribution of disease within a population. In epidemiology, what, diagnosis, who, person, where, place, when, time, why and how, cause, mode of transmission, risk factor. Again, what for diagnosis, who, person, where, place, when, time, why and how, cause or mode of transmission or risk factor. Objective of epidemiology: identify the etiology or the cause of a disease and the risk factor, that is factor that increase a person's risk for a disease. To determine the extent of disease found in a community, to study the natural history and prognosis of a disease, to evaluate both existing and new preventive therapeutic measure and the mode of healthcare delivery, to provide the foundation for developing the public health making regulatory decision relating to environmental problem. Descriptive epidemiology and analytic epidemiology. Type of the epidemiology: descriptive epidemiology, examining the distribution of a disease in a population and observing the basic feature of its distribution in terms of time, place, and person. Surveillance activities including community health survey, analytic epidemiology, testing a specific hypothesis about relationship of a disease to a putative cause by conducting an epidemiological study that relate the exposure of interest to the disease of interest, cohort, case control, and randomized trial. Basic triad of epidemiology: place, time, and person. Place, time, and person. Time, basic triad. Seasonal variation, point, source are propagated. Place, geographically restricted or widespread. Pandemic, relation to water or food supply. Multiple cluster are one. Person, age, socio-economic state, sex, gender, race, ethnicity, or behavior. Another bacterial triad of the epidemiology: host, agent, and environment. Host, agent, environment. Agent क्या है? Bacteria, biological, virus, chemical, poison, alcohol, smoke, physical trauma, radiation, and fire, nutrition, lack nutrition or excess nutrition. Characteristic: host, age, sex, religion, and custom. Occupation, genetic profile, marital status, family background, previous disease, immune status. Environment में temperature, humidity, altitude. crowding, housing, neighborhood, water, milk, food, radiation, air pollution, and noise. Gene load the gun, lifestyle pull the trigger. Gene load the gun, lifestyle pull the trigger. Host, agent, host, environment, which, and vector. Vector and insect are a living carrier that transport an infectious agent from an infected individual or its waste to a susceptible individual or its foods or immediate surrounding. Is an animative creature that conveys that agent from the environment and bring it into contact of the host. Epidemiological cause, mode of transmission, disease transmitted directly, direct person to person, common single exposure, multiple exposure, and continuous. Indirect transmission, common vehicle transmission of disease agents such as infectious pathogen, toxic chemical from a source that is common to those who acquire disease, air, water, food. If the transmission is through food and food is only served once scattered lunch, people who eat it, then it is a single exposure. The food may be served more than once, resulting in multiple exposure. When water supply is contaminated with sewage because of leaky pipes, the contamination can be either periodic, causing multiple exposure as a result of changing pressure in the water supply system that may cause intermittent contamination. Continuous, in which constant leak lead to a persistent contamination. Agent of human disease arise out of reservoir where the agent reside, metabolize and multiplies, sometimes involving an alternative or non-human host. In contrast, the agent source or transmission is a site from which it is transmitted to a susceptible host, either directly or indirectly through intermediary object. The reservoir and the source for transmission can be different or same, with implication for control the measure. Different typhoid fever affect greater than 50 million annually and account for greater than 5 lakh deaths. The specific causative agent is Salmonella typhi, a gram-negative enteric bacillus for which human hosts provide the only known reservoir. The reservoir for Salmonella typhi might be the gallbladder of an infected host, human host, but the source for transmission might be food contaminated by the host carrier. Epidemiological concept same, a major agent for foodborne illness is Staphylococcus aureus, a gram-positive spherical bacterium for which both human and other animal can serve as a reservoir. For example, a host carrier might be permanent nasal carrier of Staphylococcus aureus who determine the agent from this site, that is nose, nasal passage, are both reservoir and source. Epidemiological concept case a particular disease, health disorder, or condition under investigation found in an individual or within a population or a study group. A person having a particular disease, disorder, or condition. Example, a case of cancer, a case in case control study. One who is affected by the health or health related disease interest related response of the interest and who shows characteristic clinical features subjectively felt symptom are independently observed. Epidemiological concept, in some contexts a case may mean an infected person, but an typically a case mean that a clinical feature has been observed. Clinically disease characterized by sign and symptom, non-clinic in apparently disease, preclinical disease, disease that is not yet clinically apparent but is destined to progress to a clinical disease. Epidemiological concept, subclinical disease, disease that is not clinically apparent and is not destined to become clinically apparent, often diagnosed by serological antibody response or culture of the organism. Persistent disease, a person who fail to shake off interferon, and it persists for years at a time for life. Latent disease, an infection with no, sorry, latent disease, an infection with no active multiplication of agent, is when viral nuclei is incorporated onto the nucleus of a cell as a provirus. Contrary to a persistent infection, only the genetic message is present in a host, not the viable organism. Carrier individual harbor the organism, but it is not infected as measured by the serological studies. No evidence of antibody. This is the iceberg. I hope it will help you. This person can still infect other, although the infectivity is often lower than with other infection. Carrier status may be of limited duration or may be chronic, lasting for months or hours. Example: typhoid Mary, who carried Salmonella typhi and died in 1938, worked as a cook in New York City area, moving from household to household under different name, caused at least 10 typhoid fever outbreaks that include 51. Epidemiological concept: endemic, habitual presence of disease within a given geographic area, usual occurrence of a given disease within such area. Epidemic: occurrence in a community or region of a group of illness of similar nature, clearly in excess of normal expectancy and derived from the common or from the propagated source. Pandemic: a global or worldwide epidemic. Outbreak: the epidemic limited to localized increase in incidence of disease, example in a village or town or population. Pandemic: global. Outbreak: limited के local area था, village, town or close population. Herd immunity: the resistance of a group to an attack by disease. If a large percentage of population is immune, then the entire population is likely to protect it, not just those who are immune. Why does herd immunity occur? Disease is spread from one person to another person in a community. Once a certain portion of people in the community are immune, the likelihood is small that an infected will encounter a suspectable person to whom he can transmit the infection. More of his encounter will be with people who are immune. The presence of a large portion of immune person in a population lessen the likelihood that a person with the disease will come into contact with a susceptible individual. Why is herd immunity important? It is an immunization program. It may not be necessary to achieve 100% immunization rate to immunize the population successfully. Immunize a large part of the population. The remaining part will be protected because of herd immunity. Considering concept, disease agent must be restricted to a single host species within which transmission occur. Transmission must be relatively direct from one member of host species to another. If a reservoir is present in which organism can exist outside the human host, herd immunity will not operate because other means of transmission are available. Infection must be induced. Solid immunity, partially immune, will not build up a large subpopulation of immune people in a community. What percentage of population must be immune for herd immunity to operate varies from disease to disease. In case of measles, which is highly communicable, it has been estimated that 94% of the population must be immune. Epidemiological concept. What percentage of population must be immune for herd immunity to operate varies from disease to disease. In case of measles, which is highly communicable, it has been estimated that 94% of population must be immune before the chain of transmission is interrupted. Incubation period, interval period, interval from the set of the infection to the time of onset of clinical illness. If you become infected today, the disease with which you are infected may not develop for a number of days or weeks. During this time, incubation period, you may feel completely well and show no sign of the disease. Why does not disease develop immediately at the time of infection? Reflect the time needed for organism replicate sufficiently until it reaches the critical mass needed for clinical disease to result. Relate to the site in the body at which organism replicate, whether it replicates superficially near the skin or surface or deeper in the body. Does of any infection agent received at the time of infection may also influence the length of the incubation period. The primary prevention and action taken to prevent the development of the disease or other related condition in a person who is well and who does not have disease or condition in question. When primary prevention is effective, we should see it is in the reduced annual incidence rate of the condition. Example, immunization and smoking cessation. Secondary prevention and action taken to identify cases who are already developed the disease condition at an early stage in the disease natural history through screening and early intervention. Secondary prevention activities have no direct influence of annual incidence rate, but they might have indirect influence. In example, by reducing incidence in other yet affected consider condition what spread person to person. Effective secondary prevention activities may reduce health rate from the disease and thereby increase the prevalence of example. Most cases of breast cancer in a woman can be detected through breast self examination and mammography. Routine testing of stool for occlude the blood can detect treatable colon cancer early in the natural history. The doctor specializes in preventive medicine. So if you are reading already sick, sorry, he is not interested. Population based vs high risk approach to the prevention. Popular based preventive action taken to influence the occurrence of the disease in a population at the large without regard for the high risk status. Example, poliovirus immunization, mandatory universal addition of iodine dietary salt, folate fortification of the brain. High risk preventive action taken to influence the occurrence of the disease in a specific subgroup of the population with subgroup of identified on the basis of their documented high level of risk becoming a case. Example, low phenylalanine diet after screening for a phenylketonuria, early screening intervention for cholesterol only in children with family history for high level. Clinical practice relies on epidemiology evidence. Epidemiological evidence on the age-specific prevalence of infective agent associated with clinical feature can guide pediatric workup. How does epidemiologist proceed to identify the cause of disease? First step is to determine whether an association exists between exposure to a factor, an environment agent, or a characteristic of person and increased serum cholesterol level and the development of the disease. How do, the second step try to drive appropriate inferences about a possible causal relationship from the pattern of association that have been founded. First question to ask, when we see difference between two groups or two regions or over time, is are these difference real? If difference are real, then we ask why have they occurred? Are these environmental difference between high risk and low risk area, or there differences in the people who live to those areas? The second step can be quietly lengthy, possibly with investigation that span decade of inquiries, multiple generation of scientists, each studying one on one another shoulder. Eventually, observational data mount up to the point that public health action can be taken or that randomized controlled trial are conducted. थैंक यू वेरी मच. आई आई होप ये आज का ये फर्स्ट लेक्चर आप लोगों ने एंजॉय किया होगा. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.